We don't feel that putting your kids on the school bus every morning is the limit of your obligation to your children. We like schools that are responsive to parents' concerns. We do not like schools that try and alienate children from their parents.
Hey guys, welcome to Start Young. It's Lynn Peretti here, helping you to raise young entrepreneurs. Now in today's episode, Rabbi Daniel Lapin, who is an American rabbi who I've had previously on the show, today I wanted to ask him more about his Jewish parenting advice. I'm always open-minded and curious if someone is more older, coming from a different culture, on, what's their approach in parenting. Because whether or not we agree or disagree, I think it's always good to hear a different perspective and see what can we learn from that. And really excited for you to learn more about how the Jewish people parent their kids and what are the perspective on raising children. Enjoy! Is there any difference between Jewish family raising their kids versus everyone else? Okay, maybe Asians are a little bit different too, but still, like, let's say Americans or general population. Is there any key things that you found different to the way your parents raised you up?
Oh, yeah. No, I don't know details of other cultures. However, I do know that a frighteningly large proportion of children born in America this year will never live in a home with their mother and father. They will live in a home with their mother and a boyfriend.
Wow.
That's a problem. I don't know any other way to say it. I know life happens. I know stuff happens. I get it. And not without awareness of the pain and the suffering that goes on. But at the same time, don't fool yourself. A child raised by only one person starts off life at a very big disadvantage, and very little you do can make up for that. I wish I didn't have to say that. I have to say the truth. That is a huge disadvantage. I was extremely on a woman recently. I felt I had to be, and I'll tell you the story. There was a young man who was a student of mine. I coached him. I helped him both in professional career advice and dating advice. And he introduced me to this young woman that he wanted to marry. We hit it off reasonably well, to the extent that on one occasion she confided in me that she had had an abortion. And for the circumstance, I said, 1 or more. Well, she said 2, actually. All right. I figured as much. And I said, I understand. Her question was, should she tell him or not? And I advised her not to tell him. They got married. And by all accounts, they seemed to have a happy marriage. They brought 5 little children into the world. And they seemed, a fairly happy family. And she hit the age of 42, and she picks up, she's leaving the family. She's got to find fulfillment. She's raised her children, and there's little kids. The kids range from 5 years old to about 14 or 15. So critical ages for children to lose their mom or their dad, depending on what the arrangements are going to be. And there's going to be a custody battle because he wants the kids. And it's awfully bad. And what had happened was that Lynn, again, I'm talking about America. This may seem utterly weird in Australia. I like to think of Australia as kind of normal place, but in America, what I'm saying is not that outlandish. She was being advised by friends and also by a therapist that she should leave her family and find fulfillment. She's still young enough to build a career, and she's got to go and find herself. So she was going to harm these 5 children. She was going to throw a wrench into her husband's life. And the sad thing was that in all probability, she was going to be miserable down the road when he gets remarried and she hits 55 and 60 and discovers that her rankings on the market aren't that good. And he came to me to tell me all of this, very, very upset. He was beside himself. He tried everything to try and please her and make her happy, more than he should have, by the way. He belittled himself more than he should have in this case, which made the problem worse, not better. I decided to talk with her, asked her if she'd come over for a meeting. And I decided I was going to be brutal on the basis of the fact I couldn't do any damage. It was as bad as it could be. I couldn't make it any worse. I could only make it better. So I said to her, as soon as we'd done away with the pleasantries, such as they were, I said to her, the leopard never changes its spots.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, I grew up in Africa as a kid. And that was an expression. I don't know if you know that expression, but
yeah, I've heard of that. Yes.
We used to know a leopard never changes its spots. Well, she said, I don't know what you mean. I said, you're still the same person you were when that very first time you and I met. She said, what do you mean? I said, you'd had 2 abortions you told me about. You were a selfish person then who cared nothing for children and only for yourself. And you're a selfish person now who cares nothing for your children, only for yourself.
Wow.
Oh, did we have hysterics? Oh, my goodness. Floodgates of repressed emotions came pouring out. Anyway, bottom line is I'm happy to say that she got rid of the therapist and she...
Wow, she changed her mind.
Yeah.
So I guess my question originally was, any difference in Jewish teaching?
Yeah, in ancient Jewish wisdom, the integrity of the family is incredibly important and very little is allowed to interfere with that.
Very important, the goal is to stay with your partner and make it work as much as possible.
Make it work, yes. In other words, divorce is not the first recourse to problems and difficulties. We go to great lengths to hold it together and make it. And really the only exception is if the wife has been sexually unfaithful.
Yep.
In which case it's non-salvageable. But yes, so that's a very big thing. The second thing is that a lot of emphasis on educating the children. We don't feel that putting your kids on the school bus every morning is the limit of your obligation to your children. We like schools that are responsive to parents' concerns. We do not like schools that try and alienate children from their parents. For a lot of conversation, also a conversation about moral enigmas. For instance, okay, there's a dinner table conversation. Here's a problem, kids. Daddy has a friend called John, whether I do or not. John borrowed a tool from his neighbor, Fred. And John was using this tool to cut the hedges in his garden, just the way the tool was meant to be used, and it broke. Now, Fred says, I loaned you a working tool and I want a working tool back. And John says, hey, it would have broken if you were using it too. I borrowed a tool. I used it the way you intended me to use it. And it wasn't brand new. It broke. So I don't think I owe you anything. And we'd say to them, who's right? What is the obligation? Who owes who what?
Of course, you got to return back to how it was.
And when the children are thinking about it, I'd say, I mean, this is just an example.
I love it. So you're giving them real case studies of life and getting them to think.
So not only business case studies and business plans, but also moral issues. So we'd say, okay, how different would this have been if John rented the tool from Fred? He paid Fred $20 to use the tool for a day. Does that change the outcome at all? Well, yeah, at that point, he doesn't have to pay for it because he rented a working tool and the tool stopped working. But they could see a difference between those two cases. First case, he's got to return a working tool or compensate Fred to his satisfaction. That is one of the perils of borrowing stuff. You just have to know that. Renting is different. I'd much rather rent a car than borrow a car because if I rent it and something happens, I couldn't care less. If I borrow it, it's different. So those kinds of conversations, and it all takes work, by the way, all takes work. We never came to dinner without me having these. I keep these 3x5 cards in my pocket. And during the day, I jot down things. One of the things I'm putting down on cards is conversation topics for the family.
Oh, wow. I love that. Yes.
I don't come to the table unprepared.
Yes. So this is quite new for me too, just practicing eating together and all that.
It's during the meal, yes. You ask about differences in ancient Jewish wisdom. We emphasize very much masculinity and femininity. We do not buy into the idea that boys and girls are exactly the same and that culture that makes them that way. Nobody acculturated my daughters to read bride magazines from when they were 6 years old. For instance, this is very controversial, I know, but I'm telling you how traditional Jewish families would do it. We'd have the girls, our daughters, would help serve the meal, would help Susan in the kitchen with serving the meal. And our boy would sit at the table and be served just like I was. Now, the other side, the flip side of that is, don't miss out on this. The flip side of that is that when we traveled, which happened often, my son loaded everybody's suitcases into the truck. When we arrived at a campsite, they didn't have to do a thing. He got everything set up. And so it was delineation of masculine and feminine roles. And I can say that as of recently, they're all married and happily married and building good families of their own. But these are things, the whole idea of having a family is that there is a front door to the house. And that separates the rest of the world from your family. That's very important. And so our children learn very early, things that happen in our family are not necessarily for public consumption. You can't talk about your siblings when you're with your friends. That's private family matters. The culture out there was beaming a very hostile message in terms of sex. Number one, that boys and girls are the same. And number two, sex is in itself just another way of shaking hands and being friends. And this was completely contrary. I mean, to us, it was very big that boys and girls are very different, and we want our sons to be sons and men, want our daughters to be women. And secondly, that sex is a huge deal.
Yeah. I love this, and I can't wait to bring you back on because I have so many topics that I know we can deep dive about sex, about homeschooling. There's so many things that I just know that this is going to make everyone. So
it's a big thing, I mean, apropos of that, again, completely contrary to the culture, and maybe we'll pick up on it next time, but our daughters all raised to marry as virgins.
Wow. Yeah.
And they didn't realize at the time, but everyone now understands what a gift this is to their husband and to the marriage. There's a lot of data on this, which is kind of interesting. Building a purposeful family is a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, love to hear in the comments below, or if you have any questions, love to hear from you as well. But if you enjoy videos like this, love to invite you to watch my next video.